The doctor is back in the house.
Yep. I love it when Dr. Troy Munson's here.
This is wonderful. Today we're going to take a journey with Dr. Munson.
Welcome to the show,
It
Munson.
is awesome to be here. I love it.
Well, we're always glad to have you. You always open up our eyes and make us think. Matter of fact, Bill goes, oh my gosh, I really need to sit back and relook at what I'm eating, huh?
Thank you for asking me. Yes, I relooked it and relooked it and relooked it, and now I don't have anything to worry about because I quit eating. Yes.
That's not true.
When I tell people to pay attention to what they're eating, they just watch it go into their mouth and they still eat the same thing. So it's okay.
Well, that's good. Then I'm okay then. I got to...
Remember, knowledge is power.
That's right.
So
And he gives us a lot of knowledge.
he does.
Which we need.
I think it's important for business owners. You know, often they get really focused on just their business, but they forget their health.
Sure.
And if they're not able to run that long race, then, you know, they fall short of what they really wanted to accomplish. And, you know, it all starts with wellness.
It does.
So, do you mind talking to us today about wellness?
Let's talk about taking that journey. And just as a preamble to release people out there, we want you to understand that there is no wrong way to do a wellness journey. So many people beat themselves up, and that's not what we're about today. But we do want to give some real good ideas about what you can expect on this wellness journey because, you know, having been traveling it now since I was 10, so for over 35 years, you know, I've gone in the pitfalls, I've done these things, I've had the troubles that we're going to talk about today, and I've watched patient after patient go through them as well. So yeah, let's talk about what does that look like. Let's say somebody out there is listening to this and they stumbled upon it and they're like, oh, well, this is kind of interesting. They're wondering what is a wellness journey? What's the first step? Well, the first step is really just realizing that you might need to take it. You know,
So it's more of a mindset.
It is. Gee, maybe I'm going to, instead of stopping by McDonald's today, I'm actually going to go into the grocery store and I'm going to buy some vegetables, or maybe I'm going to prepare something myself instead of fast food. And so that would be a first step. I know it sounds almost silly, but it is an important first step. You know, it's each step that we take gets us closer to our goal of that health. And ultimately we have to ask ourselves, well, why am I doing this? Most people that begin a health journey are realizing that I can no longer do the things that I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I'm being held back by what I'm eating, by my body, and now I've got to do something different. Something has got to change. Something's breaking. And that's a great place to begin because that's a motivator. I want to talk about motivators and inspirers. Motivators, we talk about a carrot and stick mentality. A stick is a motivation. You know, I'm going to beat you until you do what you do, or until you do what I want you to do. And well, that works, you know, and sometimes we have to motivate ourselves by beating ourselves up a little bit. But I would rather start having the carrot where I'm drawing, and that's inspiration to be able to see that goal on the other side. And so one of the concepts I want people to walk away with is that we only look at the past in terms of what's good and what happened that started you on that journey, rather than the negative things of I'm this, or I'm bad, or I'm awful, or I'm not capable, or I'm just not going to be able to do this. Those are negative events. So if there's one thing that you hear today is definitely begin to look at the past as a way of remembering the good, setting up milestones so that you know you can continue to travel this when things look bleak, when things look dark. So let's say somebody decides to eat something and they say, hey, I'm going to start eating vegetables, and they do that. I have a client right now that is really just beginning the process, coming off of 3 energy drinks in the morning, eating 4 or 5 McDonald's meals throughout the day.
Holy smokes.
4 or 5, 6 pops a day, in addition to the energy drinks. Not sleeping well, not feeling well, and not even 30 yet. This is a serious issue. And he's now gotten to the point of going to a nutritionist, and then he found his way to my office. We gave him some really simple guidelines, but he wants to jump off the bandwagon and say, I'm going to spend no money on McDonald's this week, and I'm going to buy groceries at the grocery store. And I told him, I said, before you think about doing that, unless you're a really quick change, cold turkey kind of person, that may be a bit rough for you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I don't want you to get there and say, this food is awful, I don't like it, I don't have a taste for it, I want you to still have your rewards, whether it is a McDonald's meal, whether it is an energy drink, whether it is a pop. I still want you to include that in your diet while we're starting the change of adding things. That's not a step backwards. That's actually a step forwards. Begin to give yourself those little gifts. I tell them, just because I don't eat grains, do I still have them on occasion? I do. My wife baked bread for the first time in 6 months 2 days ago, and I had the heel. I love the heel. I piled it with an eighth inch of butter on the top of it. It was fresh out and it was hot and it was amazing. It was probably 3 bites. I know it sounds silly, but 3 bites meant the world to me.
Sure.
And it was an enjoyment because at the end of the day, none of us are going to live forever. But I can tell you what, if I'm 90 and I've spent the last 20 years in a wheelchair and not able to do anything, yeah, I'm going to be wondering why I did not take better care of myself.
Absolutely. One of the things that my dad would always say was this: had I known I was going to live this long, yes, I would have.
Yes.
I would have taken better care of it. I wouldn't have tried to, drink the ocean dry. I wouldn't have,
yes,
eaten the things that he ate. And so, but he would say that often, and you can hear the regret.
Sure.
So I think that's very important.
Yeah, and do I have folks in their 70s and 80s that do come in? I do. And it's amazing. Like, I'll give you an example. I have an 85-year-old man that came in to see me about 5-6 years ago, and he had erectile dysfunction. That was his big deal. He had a new wife. His previous wife had passed away, and he'd remarried. And he was concerned about that. And when I got into his history that he ate candy, and he, that was his big thing, and that he didn't do a lot of exercising, but he wasn't particularly overweight. And when I told him, I said, you're going to have to give up the candy. You just got to do it. Your blood sugar's got to be stable for you to be able to perform that. And when he did that, and he began to do some supplements that strengthened his hormones, he came in about 4 months later and said, my problem is fixed. But after 3 or 4 months, I guess it was a year, I noticed that he was gaining more weight and he wasn't feeling as good anymore, and he didn't really care about his sexual life, let's put it that way.
Sure.
And he was back to eating candy because that was more important to him. And so he was willing to change for a time, and we showed him that he could actually heal and do something and change his body at such a late stage, but it just was too little too late for him. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting. So we all make this wellness journey, and we're certainly not judging him, because if candy's what he wants to do, then man, I just helped him do it possibly longer and better, and that was enjoyment to him, and that was important, and that was okay. So from that standpoint, hey, great. So we have those little things like that. If let's say we have this gentleman who's not even 30 yet, and let's say after 3 or 4 months he actually kind of gives up, and he goes back and falls back into a pattern for 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? At one time I did start this journey and I did feel better. He'll say, you know what, I've done it once. I can do it again.
Absolutely.
So he'll stand there, and that will be the second phase. And then he'll have a little bit more idea of where to take it this time without falling into that pitfall of, I can't sustain this. And so here's kind of a funny story on myself. I know that juicing has been important, and I've juiced in the past. My wife and I got married in 2000. We had a juicer sitting in our garage for 9 years. And one day, that juicer came out of the garage, and it sat on our counter, and we began juicing. And I was fascinated by the approach. I wasn't trying to push it. I didn't beat myself up about not juicing. But when the time was right, it was right. Mm-hmm. And we juiced for a long time. Now we juice infrequently, but we still juice. And we have another juicer. And, so you'll find these things come and go where you become really, really staunch in your ways and say, I'm not going to eat any grains, and I'm going to condemn everybody in my family for eating grains when I'm not eating grains, because we'll do that. We will do that.
We'll stop them all right there.
I don't drink coffee. I gave it up. You can too. I get it, but that's your journey, not my journey. And so as we do this, I want to soften that too, but you do need to tell people what you're doing, because I did come home one day and tell my wife that I wasn't eating grain. I didn't tell her that. And so I didn't eat some of her food. And after 2 or 3 days, I could tell there was some tension in the house. And finally she just blew up at me, and blow up's a strong word. blew up at me and said, "Why don't you just tell me I'm fat?"
Oh.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Why don't I just sign the divorce papers now?
Like, well, you're not. Are you just showing me what I should and shouldn't eat by not eating certain things? I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not inform her about what I was doing. And I backtracked and we talked about it. And again, we fixed it all. But, you do need to tell those people that are kind of close to you what you're doing, because they'll wonder, and then they'll start thinking their own thoughts, and you have to help them not do that, and get into a place that's not so good. So the second time we hit this journey, you may find that there's more staying power. As you progress down this road, you'll find that your cupboards get filled with all kinds of supplement bottles, and they never get finished. And that's okay too in the beginning, but I'll tell you to refrain from doing much of that. If you find yourself already there, that you've got all these 30, 40, 50, I've seen some cupboards of 100 different pill bottles from different companies.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
And none of them, that maybe have a few taken out. So I'll tell people, please don't do that. Let's have an organized journey down this road. So I'd rather do a lot of things with food and correct diet in a lot of ways. And if things still aren't performing well, then let's find a couple of supplements that make sense.
How long, I just want to interrupt you just for a second. How long do you give food the ability to correct issues? Because if you 1 month, 3 months, sometimes that you're eliminating and you're in a sense detoxing, coming off of, if you're eating more clean, there's different things that happen. But first question, how long do you give food the ability to do its job?
I would say when you feel comfortable eating the way you're eating and it's now a part of you, I would say it's now time to address some key deficiencies. It's a great way to put it. You know what, I still am tired. I get it that this is better because I do see I'm having some wins. I am sleeping better. I see that my skin is changing. You're noticing some things change for the positive, but there's still these other symptoms that are just not performing as well as you'd hoped. That's when we really need to start digging in and say, okay, let's supply some specific nutrients that are very important that we're maybe missing. Because unfortunately, let's be honest, our food is grown in mineral-depleted soils.
Yes.
So we're not going to have a lot of things.
Very true.
So why are vitamins in vegetables and organ meats and things like that? Because those vitamins all occur around minerals. Well, if my plants don't have mineral-rich soil, they're not going to produce the vitamins that they should. So they go hand in hand. Every vitamin has a mineral cofactor, or how do you put it, little spark plug that makes that vitamin work really well. And so we go to a health food store and we buy these synthetic vitamins like B complex that have no minerals in them, but they're just the pulled out vitamins that you can manufacture in a lab anywhere in the world, and they stick them in a pill, and we think that we're taking B complex, and we're not. Because the mineral cofactors are not present, plus all the other phytonutrients that were there in nature are not existing in a manufactured vitamin. And so they're actually more of a drug. They're a safer drug than drugs, but they're still a drug because we still a single chemical, and that's a drug. And so nature didn't do that. You can't pluck a B vitamin off of a plant. You eat the plant that has all these thousands of things plus the mineral cofactors that make it work correctly. So diet will get us quite close, and so that's why we eat local. More than 3 or 4 days of a plant sitting on a shelf, it's pretty much to nature.
So we're looking at actually two things we're looking at. Today's nutrition value of food is actually diminishing because of the way that we have to produce the food, travel time of the food, things of that nature. Then also on the other side, to balance out, is we're having to really study now what goes into those vitamins and what is actually transpiring into what you just called a drug of I guess you call it drug of efficiency, vitamins and proteins and things of this nature. How do you look at this as you go on this journey? How do you know that you're getting the right amounts of vitamins, the right types, and what kind of foods? Where are we at? Do we look at a nutritionist to help us with the food aspect, or how do we make this journey go together in a as you mentioned, step-by-step procedure?
Well, I think it's confusing out there because you have all these, all these talking heads. You've got all of this misinformation, and so it's how do you cut through the chatter?
And It is. It is difficult, and there's no real easy, short answer for that. Any high-potency food, we definitely want to go after. And we talk about this in other shows where we say, okay, a lion in a savannah takes down